Men for Health and Gender Justice Organization joins the world to commemorate 16 days of activism. With this year's theme, to unite against gender-based violence, we reflect on the work that has been done in the world by global activists, and we also reflect on what is it that we're not doing right in order to be able to end gender-based violence. We look on and we interrogate further on the issues around protection of women's rights with men on the lead.
This year's theme for the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, which is Unite to Ending GBV, has never come at a more important time, where today a lot of solutions and policies have become so blind to diversity. In today's era, it's important that all voices, experiences of people be included in the policies that we do to advance lives of Botswana. This year, the theme speaks to calling a collective approach by government, civil society, different stakeholders in Botswana to hold hands together and find how best we can be able to end gender-based violence. The Botswana National Relationship Study, which was commissioned by the Ministry of Immigration, Citizenship and Gender Affairs, showed that 37% of women in Botswana had experienced gender-based violence versus 21% of men who had experienced gender-based violence. And while these statistics are available, very little statistics or data exists to cover other persons in Botswana: LGBTI people, people living with disabilities, young women and girls in hard-to-reach areas, and men and boys. This calls for us to ensure that for us to be able to achieve the goal of ending GBV, we need to document and have policies that speak to each and every person in Botswana.
My name is Tato Hamitzie, 25 years old, based Mo Gaborone, and I'm a young gay boy. One of the challenges that we face as gay men in Botswana in terms of accessing health services is regarding the issue of some nurses. They tend to stigmatize us every time we go to government hospitals to access services. It can either be with HIV-related issues or STIs.
We need service providers who can then provide counseling, who can provide psychosocial support for the community to also, because there are so many things that one deals with insofar as SRH is concerned. How we tell just acceptance of who you are and perhaps even acceptance of the type of relationships that you want, and even the type of sexual activities that you want to engage in are not so easy to discuss, whether with your partner or with your friends or with your family, and that's when you would need a professional to speak to. And that is why really it's important that people have counselors or psychosocial support service providers that they can speak to.
Men for Health and Gender Justice Organization encourages men to stand up against gender-based violence. We also encourage men, and including women, to involve the boy child at a younger age. We need to reflect back on what we are not doing right. What is it that we've left behind, in ensuring that all are inclusive or all are aware that violence against women and children is something that is not permitted by the global world. We need to encourage people and everyone to respect each other's human rights, because every person has got the right to live. Therefore, by inflicting violence on others, we are not doing anything that is right.
The advice I would give to my fellow gay community members is to get the right services at the right locations. Because if I go to government hospitals, I might be given the wrong service instead of what I needed. So the advice I would give is for them to be open when they need help and to reach out to organizations that have people who know what they need at that particular time.
As an organization, we take this time to commemorate 16 days of activism by ensuring that with the community that we work with, they are aware of the programs that we want to do. We want to encourage and also reflect more on the link between HIV and GBV. What is it that has been left behind? The link between HIV, sexual reproductive health rights, and GBV. Also noting that we have the LGBTI community. How can we cannot only address violence against women and children and leave the LGBTI community, which continues to face violence in the communities that we live in. The community continues to face stigma and discrimination, which is fueled by hate and fueled by the discrimination that is there in the communities. Therefore, we encourage others and we encourage the world at large and Botswana at large to unite against gender-based violence.
With a lot of people really not understanding much in terms of understanding the issues of sexuality, but also understanding the issues of the rights generally, the right to expression, the right to association, all of that. I remember us having to fight a lot in terms of the public having to understand, doing a lot of public education around sexuality and sexual matters, but also ultimately our fight with service providers to provide health services and legal services, both to the community, but also making the public to appreciate what is entailed.
And so Men for Health this year brings together a dialogue that aims to interrogate and further dissect how best we can be able to include each and every person in the community. This year we look at experiences of LGBTIQ persons, young people, people living with disabilities, and other people within the societies whose voices are often silenced. While we know that violence and abuse continue to increase harshly in Botswana, particularly during the COVID-19 lockdowns, very little specific resourcing and work has been done to cover other people in Botswana. And so we're hoping that the conversation this year will be able to unearth what it is that can be done to improve the lives of other people in Botswana. Each and every person in Botswana, as per the constitution and policy, deserves dignity, respect, and protection. And so such conversations that we're having this year are quite important. Would agree that policies that we have, initiatives that we have, are certain very short-lived. But we'll understand and know as well again that GBV is something that takes a long time. We intend to engage with parents, with families, with young people. As we know, the same study which I referenced earlier on highlight that 91% of the people who are perpetrators of violence themselves had been through some form of violence in their childhood. And that shows that the circle, that once you're part of the violence, you're most possibly, if you've been violated, you're most possibly going to violate another person at some point in life. And so it's important to have these honest, these uncomfortable, this naked truth, if I could say so. We need to have the most uncomfortable conversations, perhaps to find so that we can be able to heal, we can be able to deal with those issues and find a way that we can be able to help everyone. It's the cases that we meet here at Men for Health all the time, cases of men and boys who are abused, LGBTIQ who are abused, but because of the stigma and the discrimination that exists within structures, within spaces where they're supposed to protect people, a lot of cases go unreported and therefore undocumented in fear of stigma and discrimination. And so this year we're hoping that with these conversations we'll be able to start a conversation of how can we be able to ensure that all our policies are inclusive and they speak to the realities of Botswana. That is what we intend to do, and I hope that we'll be able to do that this year.